Well, I wanted to welcome everybody. I know everybody's got a busy week, I'm sure. So thank you for joining in. I'm doing this webinar with Lindsay Falconer. She's our manager of marketing here at Automation Services. We are the U.S. distributor for IDEA, and we have been working in the data analytics field for over 25 years. So Lindsay's going to be helping me during the polling questions. She'll be talking during the polling and making sure that everybody gets their CP credit, which this webinar is you're entitled to get. It's a 1-hour NASBA CP credit. In order for you to receive it, you must be logged in for the entire duration of the webcast, and you have to answer at least 3 of the 4 polling questions. So that should be pretty straightforward. At the end of the webinar, because we're going to be talking about quite a few concepts here, please submit your questions on the right side of your screen in that question box, and I will do my hardest, my best to answer all of them as best as I can. We are going to be recording this webinar, and we are going to send the video and the slides to everybody who has participated. So let's get started. All right. Let me just give you a little bit background about myself. I work here at Automation Services. I'm a trainer here. I'm an educator. I started using IDEA as a data analytic tool in 1995, right out of college. I was self-taught in it. Yeah, back then it was a DOS version. It didn't have all the intuitiveness that it does have today. Didn't have as many of the features, but it still had most of the core features. In fact, everything that I know today about IDEA or that I learned back then can still be applied today. So still very fundamental in what it can do. I began teaching IDEA and CAT's principal computer-assisted audit techniques in workshops back in the 90s because I was just so, I was really passionate about what this type of technology, what this software could do for an auditor. And I really enjoyed sharing knowledge and teaching other people, other auditors, how to make the best out of this software. That gave me an opportunity to work in Norway, and I worked for Ernst & Young in Oslo for about 4 years, pretty much working with IDEA, teaching data analytics, and from there on I worked as a consultant for the government of the Bahamas, for the Auditor General. I did a consulting stint there for about a year where we implemented data analytics throughout their audit departments. I came back to the U.S., I relocated, and now I'm working with Automation Services, who I've known for many years. They're still working with, promoting IDEA and really trying to get the profession, the auditors, both internal, external, forensic accountants, forensic investigators, anybody who's tasked with looking at data to use the most out of technology, such as IDEA. Now today we're going to be talking about visualization, and I want to start it off with, pictures provide perspective, I like to say. And, this quote where that was pretty much coined by Fred Barnard, is basically saying a look is worth 1,000 words. You've heard it said many different ways. A picture can say 1,000 words or so forth. But when he was writing this, or when he was saying this, he was really talking about how pictures can help better sell a product compared to words. You see a really powerful photo, and it can move you to buy something, or it can move you to do something, and it has a very powerful effect, pictures. Now for auditors, pictures can help accomplish something completely different. Pictures can help draw relationships and understand patterns within data. Data visualizations are a graphical presentation of data that helps the viewer better understand the underlying data. It allows for the detection of patterns, trends, similarities, and differences in a profoundly different manner than if you're just looking at the data in a purely text-based report, which contains rows and columns. And there's of course these other quotes here, such as a good sketch is better than a long speech, or by this Russian writer Ivan Tungenev. A picture shows me at a glance what it takes dozens of pages of a book to expound. So really the gist of it is pictures give you perspective and context to something. Now, today we're going to be talking about visualize and discover. And with visualize and discover, they are essentially features in IDEA, at least in IDEA 10. They're new features in the software that allow you to display your data graphically, basically giving you insights and context. It's not going to automatically tell you. It's not a how would I like to say? It's not a panacea. It's not going to give you a solution to everything, but it is going to help give you insight into this data, which you have in rows and you have in columns. And hopefully it's going to give you some context. If you're very good at interpreting graphs and comparing data points, whether it's a bar chart or scattergram or line chart, this can help you as an extra tool in your audit bag. Now, visualize and discover look very similar, but they are fundamentally different in what they do. And I'm going to show you this later on. This webinar, we're going to be, obviously I'm taking you through a PowerPoint presentation, but it's going to be heavily live demo, heavily based on live demonstration. Visualize, which is one of these two features, is driven by the user. And what does that mean? Well, you're going to be able to create a dashboard. And in that dashboard, you'll be able to create charts, and you'll be able to display statistics. And these charts and statistics is taking information that's already in either the active database or any database within your project in IDEA. By the way, if I'm talking about certain, if I'm using certain words or terms that you're not familiar with because you're not an IDEA user, you could also ask questions about that. But I'm talking about, when I'm talking about visualize and discover, I am going to be throwing some terms that are IDEA related. So forgive me if I might be going a little bit over your head with regards to some of the features in the software. If you have any questions or you're not sure, just ask. Now, as opposed to visualize, discover is driven by IDEA. And what this means is that there is technology in the software that is going to be profiling the active database, the one that you're actually working on. And based on what it finds, it's going to create a dashboard for you automatically and point you in directions that it thinks warrant special attention. I hear right here, field statistics on a database field can be selected and displayed as information panels in the dashboard. I'm going to explain this a little more so you get some context as we go through the live demo. With Visualize, after you create a dashboard, you have the option of reusing these dashboards on other databases. Essentially, you're able to leverage what you have created and reuse them so that you can perform a type of continuous auditing. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in depth as we go through the webinar. I think we have our first polling question.
Yes. Our first polling question is, are you currently using a data analytics tool? Yes, no, unsure. We are going to give you about 30 seconds to respond to the polling question. Just as a quick reminder, you need to respond to 3 of the 4 polling questions that we're going to be asking throughout the webcast. We'll give you a few more seconds so that we can get everybody to register their vote and let us know that they're here. Okay, we had 70% of the people say that yes, they are using a data analytics tool. And we hope that you are able to get some good information from this. All right.
Definitely. Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, one of my goals in this webinar is to hopefully, if you are an IDEA user and you have IDEA 10, that you run Visualize or run Discover just to get a sense of what type of insights you might be able to get from your data. And if you're not there, if you're not on IDEA 10, maybe this will be a motivation for you to maybe upgrade and see if this software is something that you can get some value out of. But let's go through this webinar. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into IDEA. Let's take a look at this. So I've got some files here on my File Explorer. And I've got 3 detailed sales transaction files. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the 2014 detailed sales file. And I've got, as you can see, I've got invoice number, date. I've got every salesperson has a number, so that information is represented. Product code. Then I've got the unit price, quantity, and then I've got all the sales information, all the sales amounts pretty much calculated across. So really it's just a very basic file. It has 538 records. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dashboard because I want to start creating some charts. So under analysis, here are my 2 features, Discover and Visualize. Now I will go over Discover after we have talked in depth on Visualize, so you can really see the difference and kind of appreciate what Discover might be able to do for you. So let's click on Discover. Let's click on Visualize. So with Visualize, it launches, and right now what it's going to do is going to open up and there's going to be no dashboard. Right now in this project, I don't have any dashboards that I've created. So if I did, I could select it, but right now what I'll do is I'm going to create a brand new dashboard. And here I'm going to select what type of chart. These are my options, 6 of them. I've got a column, I've got a bar chart, line, pie, I've got a scatter chart, and a tree map. I'm going to talk about these throughout the webinar so you get an idea of what each one of these can do. So first things first, we're going to select column chart, and I'm going to group this database by invoice dates. So that's the first thing I'm going to be looking at. Invoice date, I'm going to select stratification. So what this does is when you are selecting the different fields, you're going to be, Visualize is going to be summarizing the data and it'll be stratifying it. That's how it creates the charts basically. So let's select stratify. The statistic, I can either see the total amounts, the average, or the number of transactions. So you can look at these charts in different ways. So I'm going to select sum, and the field to sum or to base this sum on, these are my options. These are all the numeric fields. So I'm going to pick the one that I want to look at. For me, that's applicable, which is sales plus tax. So Visualize will then populate this chart with this information. And as you can see on the x-axis, you have the invoice date, and then you've got the total sales plus tax amounts for each strata. Then I click on Save, and then it asks me, what's the layout going to be? I have basically 1 of 4 options, so I could select 2, 3, or 4. I'm going to select 4. And now it puts it into one of those 4 boxes. Now, I can create extra charts in these 3 remaining boxes. The top, these are all reserved for field statistics. I'm going to get that, talk a little bit more about that later. But what I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm going to fill these up. So over here, since we have 2014, let's say that for this chart, I want to create let's say a column chart, but instead of 2014 data, I want to look at 2015. So here I'm going to select 2015. This time I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to group it by invoice date, stratify it, and the field to sum is going to be sales plus tax. Okay. So now I go and I save it. So now I have 2014 data, I've got 2015 data. So as you can see, this dashboard under Visualized is not database specific. I can compare, I can put in any one of these boxes information from different databases. Of course, it all depends on how you want your dashboard to look and what is important for you. And then what I can do is here at the bottom left, I can create a third. This time I'm going to create a bar chart, and I'm going to opt for 2014. I'm going to select, the grouping is going to be, let's say, product code. The statistics will be sum, and I'm also going to choose sales plus tax. So here we have this chart. I'm going to save it. So now it's giving me this information in a bar chart based on product code. So here is my product codes 1 through 6, and these are the total sales per product code. Lastly, I'm going to create a fourth. Let's see what else I can create here. I guess I can create a pie chart. Or maybe what I'll do is I'll just create a bar chart, select 2015 data, and do the same thing. Product code and sales plus tax. Okay, so I've got my 2014, I've got my 2015, and then what I can do is, let's look at, well actually let me show you a tree map, because now I've just gone through a couple of these bar charts. If I go back to PowerPoint, and what I'm going to do is go to the slide. Let's see if I can find it. All right, so here we have Treemap. And with Treemaps, Treemaps basically, they provide a hierarchical view of your information that makes it possible to identify patterns. So looking at this tree map over here, we see a lot of boxes in different sizes and colors that are, in this case, red, blue, and purple. The size of the box is determined by the number of transactions, and the color indicates the value of those transactions. So red, which you see over here, this big red box, would be high value in proportion to its size, and blue would be low value in proportion to its size. So what we can do is we can create a tree map, for example, sales plus tax by product code or by salesperson. Going back into IDEA, if I decide to, all right, I don't want to have this bar chart, I'm going to change it. I can click on Properties, select Tree Map, and I'm going to select, let's see, we can select 2015, why not? We could group it by product code, and the sum will be sales plus tax, but the size by will be by count. So let's click on that for a second. All right, if I maximize this, which you can do if you want to see this information bigger and take more real estate on your screen, just click on maximize. As you can see over here in red, it's telling you that the size of this box signifies that there are very few records in relation to, for example, this box, which has, if you hover over it, it shows you there's 834 records within this space. Over here, you only have 3, but look at the dollar value. It's 8.3 million. That's why it's in red. And if you look at the dollar value in this box, it's only 3.2. So the tree map is showing you, yeah, this is a small size, which means low number of records, but the significance of it, the dollar value, is very high in proportion. So I can pretty much restore this. So now I've got my bar charts for last year, or at least for 2014, 2015, this bar chart, and then I've got this tree map. In addition to the 4 charts, key information or statistics from select fields in these databases can be calculated and displayed up here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on each one of these and generate a statistic. So here I have the database. I can specify within my project which database I want to show a statistic from. So in this case, I'm going to stick with Detail Sales 2014. The field I'm going to choose is sales plus tax, for example. And I've got all of these various statistics. Now, for those of you who are familiar with IDEA, these are the same type of field statistics that you will see when you run it. So all of this information, I'm sure if those of you who have used IDEA should be familiar with it. You can choose the absolute value, the negative value, the minimum, the maximum. I'm going to choose the net value. That's what I want to see. So here I've got my sales plus tax net value. On the second one, let's say I want to look at, again, the sales plus tax, but this time I want to look for number of 0 items. So here, and there's none, there are no 0 items. But the reason why I want to put this in here is because if I decide that I want to use this dashboard later on, and I use it on, let's say, next year's sales file, and now it's no longer it's no longer a 0, but it's actually a value greater than 0, like 1 or 5. Well, this is going to give me a potential anomaly. This is going to alert me, okay, here are some special statistics that I really wanted to look at, and now I actually have a hit on one of these. And if I wanted to click on it, it can drill down to the database and, give me all the records that make up that particular statistic. So here it is drilling down to the underlying record. So now I'm going back, and I'm going to fill up this area over here. So this is going to be invoice dates. I'm going to select earliest, latest dates. Earliest. Over here I'm going to select invoice date again, latest dates. Quantity, I can select, let's say, negative values, because there shouldn't be any negative values. So if there is a hit, I want to be aware of that. And of course, like for, let's say, for unit price, I could select the average. So really what I'm doing here is I'm just building a dashboard that I can use again. So here's my average value. So now I've got my 6 field statistics and my 4 charts. Now dashboards can be saved and they can be applied to other databases such as, next year's sales transaction information. So let me click on the Save button, and over here I can just give it a name. So I'm going to call this Sales 2014 So let me just go back to the slide over here. So here I'm talking about reusing dashboards. And, refreshable dashboards, they, when you think about it, the fact that you can actually take something that you've already made and leverage to, let's say, another period's information, you're maintaining consistency. In fact, it gives way to the idea of continuous auditing, because it allows you to do 2 things. You could improve the concept of continual testing in the business process, or improve the concept of continual testing to the business. And then, of course, you hand back the continuing test to the business process. Basically, you're maintaining consistency. If there are certain tests that you do on a particular area within your audit, and you start creating dashboards based on specific databases that you create, which is part of your audit program, you could save that as a dashboard. And then when you perform these tests again, or on the same type of information but in a different period, you could just apply that dashboard. And you can compare the results that you get within those visuals from, let's say, this year to next year and so forth. So let's go back. Let's go to the next slide over here. All right, so let me take you back to IDEA so I can show you this. So right now, going back to the dashboard, if I close it now, which I'm going to do, I'm going to close this dashboard. Now it takes me out and I'm back into IDEA. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Visualize one more time, just so you can see the dashboard menu. Here is this dashboard that I have saved. And the dashboard that we're going to select here, it's mapped to two different databases. If you recall, I had brought in a chart from 2014 or three charts from 2014, but there was also one chart from 2015. So I have data that is being mapped in two different databases, Detail Sales 2014, Detail Sales 2015. So what we want to do here is select the new IDEA databases to remap to the existing dashboard and save it as a new dashboard, essentially. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Reuse, and these are my two databases that are being mapped to this. But I'm going to change 2014 to 2015. And then I'm going to take 2015 and I'm going to remap it to 2016. So what it's going to do is it's going to create the same dashboard, but it's going to populate everything that was in 2014 with 2015 information and everything that was in 2015 to 2016. Then I'm going to click on Create New, and I'm going to call this, Sales 2015. Then I click on Save, and I run it. So it should give me the results of 2015 and 2016. So as you can see now, it's the same dashboard, but now it's populated with different information. It's looking at, again, the same field statistics, but now it's related to 2015. Same thing with the charts. Notice that there was these two, there was this bar chart that was related to 2016, and of course, the detailed sales file 2016 also had a tree map. So in the previous, it was just related to 2014, 2015, and I can show you this. So if you just remember what you're looking at over here. If I go back to the home menu and I click on 2014, it'll give you the same dashboard, but the information is going to be different. So this is about you creating a template and then you reusing it on similar information. Now, if I ran this on accounts payable, it wouldn't work because the field names would probably be different, and the fields will actually be different as well. So these are two things that you also have to keep in mind: the consistency in the field names and the consistency in the field types. But of course, you want to compare apples and apples within this space. So you want to try to maintain that consistency within the data sets. All right, so let me just quickly regroup over here. And I think we are on to the second polling question, Lindsay. So here's our second polling question.
Thank you, Mario. Our second polling question is, if you had access to data visualization features, how likely are you to use them on a regular basis? Highly likely, likely, somewhat likely, not likely, or unsure. Again, we'll give you about 30 seconds to a minute to go ahead and submit your response to the polling question. This is our second of 4 polling questions, and remember, you must respond to three of the 4 of them in order to receive your CPE credits. All right, we've got 94% of the people have submitted. 95. I don't see any other responses coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and turn it back to you, Mario.
Thank you. All right, so let me go to the next slide over here. And here's where I'm talking about multi-series visualizations. Now here, with multi-series visualizations, try saying that 100 times. So here, visualization can be used to display monthly sales information graphically for more than 1 year. So you can compare multiple periods within that same graph. And in order to run a multi-series chart, we need to append, this is one of the things that we need to do in IDEA in order for this to work. We need to append, at least in this example, the 2014 and 2015 sales data. So we need to actually put these two databases together in some way. Now, before we can append these two databases, we need to prep the sales files, these two sales files, by creating a new field for each database and giving it the name Sales Plus Tax 2014 and Sales Plus Tax 2015. The reason why I'm doing that, it almost seems like I'm creating a redundancy, but because I want to be able to apply this dashboard seamlessly in future periods, I don't want to be changing the names of the native fields. So I'm creating new fields and just having, it'll have the same information in that field. Like I'm going to be creating a Sales Plus Tax field that has the same information that's in the native Sales Plus Tax field. The difference is that it's going to be called something different. It's going to be called, as you can see here, Sales Plus Tax _ 2014. So, excuse me, and then I will do the same thing for the 2015 file. I'm also going to create a field that will calculate, based on the invoice dates, what month it's in, because I'm going to be grouping this by month, and you'll see what I mean in a second. All right, so I'm going to go back into IDEA. I'm going to close this out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a field called Sales Plus Tax 2014. It's going to be a non-numeric field, 2 decimal places. The formula is simply Sales Plus Tax. So I'm creating basically the same field. And then the second field, the second non-virtual field is going to be month. This will also be numeric. And the formula, which I'm going to use an add function for, is at month invoice date. So that's my formula. Click OK. As you can see, it creates these two. Okay. This is a virtual field, so let me remove it. And I'm going to recreate it again. So it's important to, when you're going to be doing this, to create non-virtual fields, because Visualize doesn't work with normal virtual fields. It needs to work with a non-virtual, since a virtual field is not really, doesn't really have data in it. So let me just call this month, make this into a non-virtual field. Because a virtual field maintains information in memory. All right, so now I've got these two fields. And I'm going to do the same thing for 2015. I'm going to call this Sales Plus Tax 2015, 2 decimal places. Again, I'm going to call this month. Make this native. And change this to a regular numeric field. All right. So this is my prep. Basically, I've created these two. All right, good. And now what I'm going to do is append these two databases. So clicking on append, I'm going to append 2015 to 2014, and I'm going to call this detail sales 2015 versus 2014. Click OK. All right, so now I've got this larger database, and as you can see, I've got two fields now: Sales Plus Tax 2014, Sales Plus Tax 2015. Now I'm going to create a dashboard. So I'm going to click on Visualize, and I'm going to make a new dashboard. I will create a column chart. And this is going to be my database that I'm going to be looking at. I'm going to group it based on this new field that I created, month. And the statistic is going to be sum, and I'm going to be looking at sales plus tax 2014, and now I can look at sales plus tax 2015. So here I'm looking at these two data sets side by side. And before we saw them in two different charts. So now here is what, here it is side by side, and this is pretty much the essence of multi-series. So I can click on save, click on these four, and I can do the same thing for, pretty much any other type of database where I want to draw a comparison between, 1 year or one period and the next. So what I'll do is I'm going to click on, let's say if I wanted to do this, let's say I want to make a line chart, and I'm going to group it by sales rep number. These are the sales people. The statistic will be sum, and again, I can select sales plus tax for 2014, 2015. So there is my comparison for those 2 years. I could also, let's say I wanted to create a pie chart. Now pie charts, they're a visual way of displaying data that might be otherwise be given in a small table. Generally they are used to show percentage or proportional data, and usually the percentage represented by each category is provided next to the corresponding slice of the pie. So, pie charts are good for displaying data in about 6 or fewer categories. When there's more categories, it can be a little difficult to distinguish, at least looking at it with our eyes, the relative sizes of different sectors. So the chart can become a little bit difficult to interpret. In this case, I can, let's say I want to look at product code. There's only 6 product codes in this database, and I could look at sales plus tax. So here are the various product codes. I can click on save. I can do the same thing here. Let's see what else. How about, yeah, we can do this. Well, actually, we can leave this alone. We can talk about scattergrams also. So if I go over here, I can also select, a scatter chart. Scatter charts, they display each transaction as a dot in the chart. So what I'll, like, for example, I'm going to select, we can select invoice date as the x-axis, and let's look at quantity, excuse me. And what else can we do? If I click on OK. All right, let's maximize this so we can look at this a little bit. Actually, let me go back here. And let me click on the properties. Let's see. Let me click on a different database. This might actually help. There we go. This makes more sense. So right now I'm looking at the detailed sales file for 2015. I'm looking at the invoice date versus the quantity, the number of items sold. And scattered, in this case, the scatter chart is displaying each transaction as a dot. If I scroll all the way to the right, you can see each one of these dots represents a record. So if you have many transactions, they will tend to be grouped together into clusters, and we see that evidently down here. The dots that fall outside of those clusters would be technically the exceptions or outliers. So you got this guy over here, you got some of these that are all by themselves. These would be considered the exceptions. So scatter charts could be an effective way to see the outliers within your data set. So these are the things that kind of fall outside of what's normal within this database, because everything here is clustered around this amount, these number of items. Over here we see that there's a quantity of 16,500 units. So if I wanted to drill down, I could see, why is this the case? There's this many items that were sold. So if this was something that I wanted to explore further, I can go and talk to whoever is in charge of that business area and figure out what the nature of this transaction is. It's a way for you to look at this information and see, top down, what might be the exceptions within the data set. All right, so let me go to slide 42 because I think we're at our third polling question. It's all yours, Lindsay.
Thanks, Mario. Our third polling question is, would your organization benefit from tracking performance and trends to improve business processes? Yes, no, or unsure. This is our third polling question. Please recall that you need to respond to 3 of the 4. I will give you, again, about 30 seconds to reply. We're getting a lot of good questions, and we'll answer those at the end of the webcast. If you do have questions, please be sure to type them in the questions box on the right side of your screen. A few more seconds for the last few of you stragglers to go ahead and reply, and only 91% have voted thus far. All right, close in a few seconds. All right, Mario, turning it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. All right, so let's continue on. And let's talk about drill down capability and extracting the information to be, used as part of your testing, further testing within IDEA. So if I were to go back into the dashboard, and of course we have 4 charts. These are incomplete, but let's not bother with that for a second. Let's say I wanted to drill down and look at the transactions within this particular data point. These are all the transactions. You can see it's related to month equals 7. It's all related to 2014. And let's say I want to, right now this is not an IDEA database, but if I want to make it into an actual database that I can do for the test in IDEA, what I can do is I could click on the create IDEA script. This is going to create a script that I can then run in IDEA to generate this database. So what I'll do is I'm going to call this let's say July 2014, because that's the data seems to be that I'm clicking on, all transactions related to that period. And then what I can do is I can save this, of course. Let me save this as, I can call this sales test. And if I were to click on library and go over here to all the various library files that I have, if I go to macros, there is my script. And by double clicking on it, it'll open up the script. I can run it. And there is the file. So I can extract from these visualizations anything that I've drilled down, I could then extract it as its own database within IDEA. All right, so let me quickly now go to the next part over here. There's also one thing that I wanted to show you, and what I'm going to do is open up a dashboard here. Let's open up 2015. All right. Looking at all the different options here within this menu, as you can see, each one of these dashboards has that. I could click on the grid view. This is going to show me the information in tabular format. And if we expand that, what you're seeing here is basically a stratification. So here's sales plus tax within the respective periods that it belongs to. So we can actually see what this information looks like in a tabular. And of course, if you've done this many times in IDEA, this is something you're quite familiar with. And now what we have the ability is to show this in graphical form. So going back, let's restore it. I can, just quickly click on the grid so you can see how this information is showing up. Well, actually, with the tree map, you can't do that. So here you have a summarization by product code, and of course, here you also have a stratification based on invoice dates. All right, so let me go over one thing here as well. If I were to click on copy to clipboard, okay, let me just expand this a little bit. I can click on that. It copies the graphic, just the graphic, so it's just an image, and I could open up Excel or any third-party application, and I could paste it in there. So this can be used as, a way for you to create your work papers by inserting the graphic that you're generating, whether you're using the visualized dashboards or whether you're running Discover on that database and you found certain things that warrant your extra attention and you want to take a further look onto. Now, speaking of Discover, that's the next thing we're going to talk about. So what I'm going to do is go to a PowerPoint, and let's go further into Discover. Now, I would be curious to know, for those of you that have Idea 10, how many of you have used Discover, because it's this button that's just waiting to be pressed over there, and be curious to see what type of insights you might have been able to find and figure out on your own. Now, Discover is a new feature in Idea 10 and introduces a brand new technology in the software that they're calling analytic intelligence. And what the technology does is that it analyzes the active database, profiles your data, determines what fields and what information is relevant, and it creates a dashboard consisting of 6 field statistics and 4 charts. Now, we've already gone through statistics. We've already gone through charts. We've done this manually. So why is this different? Well, the answer is because the analytic intelligence or the technology that powers this feature is identifying areas that you may want to focus your attention, okay? The technology is powering the analysis and creating the visualizations automatically for you. You're not creating them. As a result, it can be viewed as a starting point for beginning the process of analyzing and interrogating your data. In a way, it's acting like a guide. So you as the auditor or the investigator, you're not required to follow what Discover shows you, but it is there after it's done all its analysis and it shows you what it has found. It's there to shine a light into areas where you could start your analysis, but you're not quite sure where to begin. And this is kind of pretty much what it looks like when you run Discover. It imports the active database. So when you run Discover, it's not like you can just decide that you want to, it's not like a normal visualized dashboard that you can bring in a database you can bring in one database and then bring in another database within that dashboard. When it's running its analytic intelligence, it's database specific. So whatever you have open, that's the database that it's going to interrogate. Once it's imported that information, it will create the dashboard automatically. And one of the things that it tends to look at, and it's very specific to whatever database you are working with, it'll give you things like 0 items. It'll show you if there are any fields that, or at least key fields, where there might be 0 items, blank, or negative amounts, where you might look closely, where you may want to look closely. For example, sales plus tax, quantity, overtime, and things that wouldn't make sense. Based on the algorithms that are built into this technology, it will shine a light into those areas, and then you as the auditor could decide, oh, this is normal, it's a false positive, it's fine, or you may want to look at this further as well. It'll also look at things like import conversion errors, transactions that are occurring on the weekend, potential cutoffs. So it's going to look at dates as well and see if this database is a calendar year, but there is transactions that relate to the year before it or the year after it, it's going to put them into the statistics box as well. And then you can look and see if this is a good thing or if this is something that has to be reviewed further. If it doesn't find anything, let's say your database is completely perfect when it comes to these areas, then it's going to show you information. It'll show you things like net value or the average value. So not everything is bad. If it can't find anything, or based on its algorithm, it doesn't really detect anything that's weird, it's just going to show you some information, just like you would if you were to create a dashboard yourself. So in this case, when it creates this dashboard, it identifies the most relevant field to match to the most relevant graphic. It automatically identifies the primary transaction field, at least the amount field, the date field, and any category fields. It will analyze the data within each of those fields, looking at its properties to determine the importance of each field. And it does a type of ranking from left to right. So after the relevant fields have been identified, IDEA performs analyses involving, and it's using things like interquartile range analyses, standard deviation to measure the amount of variation within your data set. So for those of you familiar with statistics, the IQR is often used to identify outliers. Those outliers are deemed to be of higher priority and are therefore displayed to you first in the dashboard, which are represented by these red bars. Or of course, here in the Treemap you have this in red as well. As a result, Discover automatically defines the best statistics and fields to use, and it's going to display the most relevant graphic to help you find at least the best insights into your data with respect to that particular database that you are running Discover on. So similar to Visualize, Discover allows you to drill down to the underlying records in a data set that make up each bar. And then you can do the same thing. You can extract that information and you can follow it up and do some further substantive testing on it. So once you run Discover, each one of these boxes can be customized. Okay. Now, you might be asking, well, what's the point of running Discover if I can just customize all of this? Well, you could run Discover so it can kind of get an opinion or get this analytic intelligence to work for you and show you, okay, these are areas that you may want to focus your attention on. And then you say, okay, well, I've got a dashboard that I can now change up, and I want this type of information to show, and you can save that as a different dashboard that you can then reuse. So in a way, this kind of does the legwork, and then you just take it, whatever it's showing you, make whatever changes you want, and then use that as a type of standard template for future use. So let me just quickly show you how this looks. If I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to just close all these databases, go back to File Explorer and show you Detail Sales 2014, and I run Discover. Well, let's see this. Now it's actually mining this information. It's doing analyses on this, and it's going to populate a dashboard for you. Let's see what it finds. Okay, so here's my findings on running. It's telling me that the earliest date, let's look at this, is January 2nd, 2014, and I've got this. All right, so right now this looks to me like it's maybe there's some records that are missing, or maybe this is just informational. Here it's giving me the net value, which is just informational, I believe. It's giving me the sales plus tax net value as well. All right, everything looks fine. Well, here's the average value, 11,000. That seems to be, that might be quite high depending on the business. Then I've got these charts as well. Here it's showing that this is a little bit outside of what's normal. As you can see, it's stratified this detailed sales file by by number of records, or actually by amount, and these are the number of records. So here it's saying, okay, there are 42 records between 22,000 and 216. This is saying that it's a little bit out of the norm. You could drill down, you could look at this further, you can make your own determination as to whether this is really just a false finding or not, and then you can go back. But again, this is a good way for you to start creating future dashboards that you can use on information that now you are driving and you're saying, well, this is what I want to see in the future. I want to have a dashboard that shows me this information compared to this information. And again, when you're running dashboards, it's not just on the active database or whatever you've just imported from the client. It could be on anything that you've extracted. So if you've extracted from General Ledger all transactions related to payroll, you could create a dashboard and put payroll-related information within this dashboard that can then be, let's say, reused in, let's say, the next month. Or if you want to compare it as a multi-series, you can compare it to another year. You can also look at multi-series when it comes to departments within a general ledger or within a particular data set. So you can compare departments, you can compare geography, location, and so forth and so forth. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use it. You just have to really use your imagination and see, what these what kind of insights you might be able to get through these visualizations. So in summary, before we conclude here, visualization gives perspective and context to data. I think everybody here would agree to that. We talked a little bit about visualize, the feature within IDEA where you can build and display charts and statistics on one or more databases to be displayed in a dashboard. We have visualize draws heavily on summarization and stratification of the data when building charts. You can drill down to the data. The user can customize the charts and statistics within the dashboard as they see fit. The dashboards can be reused, let's say on next month, next year's data, so comparisons can be drawn from those visualizations. Discover, on the other hand, is using analytic intelligence to import the active data, analyze the information, and create a dashboard automatically that shows possible outliers within the data set. And also, it's kind of pushing you in an area where you may want to focus your attention. Discover is a great starting point for beginning the process of analyzing your data to gain an understanding of the relationships within the database. So, a picture can be worth 1,000 words. And, well, I'm pretty much at the end of my webinar. I believe we have one last polling question, Lindsay.
Yes, our last polling question is, do you believe the increased use of data visualization will improve the future work of auditors? Yes, it already is. Most likely, no, not that critical, or unsure. We are getting to the end of our time. I don't know, Mario, if you had a chance to read through the questions. We might be able to answer one or two of those. And if you have any other questions, go ahead and send them in. If we can't get to them right away, we might be able to follow up with you after the webcast.
Yes.
And leave another couple seconds because I still see a couple stragglers are responding to the poll. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give it back to you, Mario, for those last few questions.
Okay. Well, screen looks generic. Let's see here. I can hear, but I can't see. Let me ask you this: did people have? People able to follow the screen?
Yes. We started getting a couple more questions if you scroll down through that.
Oh, okay, got it. All right, excuse me. Let me scroll further down. Okay. Just give me 1 second. It says here, let's see, how do you change the stratification parameters? Well, that's a good question. That was a question I had too. Right now, at the moment, it's fixed, and it's something that we are definitely addressing with Caseware, the ability to, at least when it comes to visualize, to determine what those stratification parameters should be. I, for one, as a user, would want to be able to make or be able to dictate what the strata will be, what the increment's going to be. At the moment, I don't know what the status of that is, but it's something that I'm going to be on top of because I think it's important. But right now, at the moment, it is fixed by whatever the software is at the moment. So it's just something we have to wait and see. This is a new feature. It's doing its job and everything, but of course, getting user feedback is very important. So this is one thing that I'm definitely in agreement with. Let's see here. One person writes, for visualized charts, can you choose a stratification? Okay, that I already covered. So this would be ideal to set up for 4 quarters of a year for ease of visual comparisons and maybe include in the annual report. Yes, you can definitely do that. Let's say well, if you're doing sort of a continuous auditing and you're getting data 4 times a year, you could run a visualization where you're deciding what type of data you want to include within these panels. And every time you come to the new quarter, you just bring in that information, populate it, and basically you're just building this visualization little by little. I have trouble pronouncing visualization, excuse me, but it can be ideal for that. That's just one way of doing it. As an auditor, you definitely want to, I feel like it's good to have that as a tool to be able to see this information more graphically. And I would run, because it's no extra work. It's just me taking the data that I'm getting every quarter, bringing it into Visualize, and then seeing how this information looks next to the previous quarters. Not only that, but it could also help identify areas that seem out of whack, that might not be normal. It says here, can you set it up such that once you upload your quarterly data, IDEA will automatically output a series of charts you select? Actually, yes. Because at least in the beginning, let's say you're building 4 quarters of data in a dashboard. Well, every time you come to a new quarter, you're going to have to pick that database and bring it in or have it be reflected within the dashboard. But now you've got, let's say you got your 4 quarters. And for example, if I were to go back here and click on, I'm going to open up this comparison. I think it's this one. Anyway, next year, as I'm getting new quarterly information, I can just map each quarter to that dashboard that's already looking at 4 databases. And if I were to reuse, let's say I reuse this, see there's 2 databases here that are mapped to that dashboard. Pretend this is quarter 1, this is quarter 2, and then you have 2 more over here. Then I can just remap it to the new quarter. And by doing that, every time I'm remapping it, when I get that new quarter and I run Visualize, I'm going to get a graphic or a dashboard that's going to be reflecting this new year's 4 quarters. And this way you don't have to worry about inconsistency in how the dashboard is compared to last year's. You're comparing apples to apples. And that's the way, I would do it. Is it possible to export the charts created through this visualization? Yes. Well, yes, in a way. You can copy this to a clipboard, and it'll, as I mentioned, as I showed you before, you can paste it to a third-party app. But you cannot export this graphic as a dynamic graphic with the ability to drill down. That's not possible at all. But yeah, you could make it. You could basically what this is doing is just taking a screenshot of your chart and allowing you to paste it in whatever application you want to paste it into. Yeah, you can definitely paste it into PowerPoint. Let's see here. When creating the charts and graphics from a database, are you able to give a dashboard with a graphic that has the same information to 2 people with 2 different looks? For example, the CEO wants to see bar charts and the CFO wants to see pie charts. I'm thinking if you wanted to do that, you would have to change the properties. So let's say the CEO wants to see it like this, right? Oops, let me just escape this and let me restore it. So the CEO wants to see this and the CFO wants to see this graph in a different way. Well, you could send them this as it is right now, and of course if you wanted to make one for the CFO, you could either save this as a different dashboard, let's say 2015, CFO, and then you can change the parameters. So instead of a bar chart, you could, instead of a column chart, you can make it into a bar chart and save it like that. So yeah, you would have to do it that way. There's no automation when it comes to that. What is the advantage over Tableau? Well, I'll have to be honest with you. I'm not very well versed when it comes to Tableau. I don't know if Lindsay could jump in and give her 2 cents. But here's what I think. I mean, I'm an auditor, and my background is in audit. And I've been using IDEA a long time. Ideas, I think, is just an amazing tool, not because it's just IDEA, because the whole process of computer-assisted audit techniques, data analysis. I can extract information, I can summarize, I can do things that I can't do manually. I mean, that was the big thing in the 90s, the ability to save time, the ability to reduce risk by examining 100% of the population and getting results that were a lot more accurate. Now, I'm able to look at a lot of this substantive work, or let's say test and control work that I might be doing on a database, whether it's accounts receivable, general ledger, payroll, and I'm able to take some of this information that I'm doing, some of these tests that I'm doing, and running it through a dashboard to see how this looks visually. I like that because I'm not saying it's going to find, it's not going to find me the solutions, but I know managers, I know executives, they like to see graphs. They might be very good at analyzing and seeing trends. Putting this information in there, I think is a good help for us. It doesn't hurt. But also from an auditor standpoint, by looking at this information, we have the potential to see anomalies, things that are outside the normal range. And that's something that we are very good at, looking for things that are out of place, looking for the problems within all of that data. And that's part of our job. We do test of control, we do substantive testing. We're trying to make sure that the numbers represent what they're supposed to represent. This is just a way for you to look at it in a different way. So I'm not sure what Tableau or what this has over Tableau. I think, as far as I know, that Tableau is more of a tool for managers, for CEOs to make important business decisions about the company, about the organizations, very top-down. And of course, you can drill down to the data. And as for auditors, we're more micro-oriented. We're looking for the needles in the haystack. And we're using this as sort of an aid for that. So Lindsay, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess I would say the biggest advantage over Tableau is a lot of what Mario just spoke to, is the analytic capabilities within IDEA. IDEA, if you need the more advanced visualization and graphics that you can get with Tableau, IDEA can work with Tableau, but then you're running between 2 kind of separate systems. Whereas using the visualization features within IDEA, you're able to stay in the same software. You have the drill down capabilities when you're in specific graphs, and you have the analytics backup that you don't get with Tableau. And it's kind of a nutshell.
Okay, let's go further here. Is there a way, let's see here, How do you gain an extract file from the visualization dashboard versus just a visual? Well, I guess what you're asking is, how do I get the data out of here? How do I gain an extract file from the visualization dashboard versus just a visual? Well, you can click on it. I'm assuming what you want to know is, how do I get the actual underlying data that represents this point? And looking at the table of the actual records. Well, here's the actual records that make up that data point. There's 143 records that make up that particular data point out of the total population of 900. Now, right now, there isn't a facility to extract this automatically to generate an idea database. That's because Visualize and Discover, they're using a completely different analysis engine called Phoenix. But this is going to be resolved in future versions, the ability to generate a database from these visuals. But right now, what you can do is you can create a script. And if you click on this little idea script icon, it allows you to save it. So I'm going to just call this new script. And then once I exit the dashboard and go back into IDEA, I can run that script by going into Library. Here's the macro folder where all scripts within that managed project are located. I then run it, and it creates that database that I called new script. So this is the way you would actually get that underlying information from that dashboard. All right. What does the file format? Yes.
I was just going to say, we're at beyond time. So let's go ahead and do one more question, and then we can be finished for the webcast.
Okay. Let's see here. Let's see what else I got here. How well does Discover work with multi-series databases? Well, Discover doesn't create multi-series data. It doesn't create a multi-series chart because it's only analyzing the active database. So it's not doing analysis on more than one. It's just that one, and then from there it's populating those 4 charts with based on what it finds. It's looking for anything that might be out of the ordinary. So you can't do multi-series when you run Discover, but after you run Discover and you see the information, then you can say, okay, well, I want to base a dashboard out of this, but I want to change a couple of things. I'm going to now, look at different databases within this dashboard. I want to bring in a database from last year. I want to bring in a database from, last quarter. And now you can create multi-series within that dashboard. But it's no longer a Discover dashboard. You're already putting you're interjecting your own customization within it. So as soon as you start replacing what Discover has found for you, now it becomes more of a visualize dashboard, which then you can just do whatever you want with it and display whatever information you want to display. I hope that answers the question. All right, Lindsay, well, thank you very much, and I want to thank everybody for joining me for this webinar on Visualize and Discover.
Yes, thank you. Have a great afternoon.